And again, this is Igor Girkin speaking, so, he doesn't like Ukrainians much, let's just put it that way. Quote, there are still two main hotspots. In Bakhmut, fierce street fighting continues. The enemy, that is Ukrainians, is being pushed out of the western part of the city very slowly. Wagner is actively reinforced with army units and Mobiks. Stormtroopers can no longer cope without them. The losses incurred are being felt. Ukrainians, by the way, report themselves that, there's a lot of losses in Russian mobilized, especially from artillery. Continuing on. Near Avdiivka, things are much worse. As a result of meat assaults, in recent days, the composition of several assault companies has been knocked out without the slightest result. Not the worst companies, by the way. The problems are the same as for the entire past year. Attacks are carried out without sufficient artillery preparation, and what they have is very inaccurate and very few shells, with almost no armored vehicles, and sometimes without them at all. Aviation operates approximately as actively and successfully as in Battle of Borodino in 1812. And then Girkin gives his predictions here. My forecast remains the same. It will not be possible to encircle Avdiivka. A breakthrough near Vodyane is necessary to encircle the city from the south, before the counteroffensive of the armed forces of Ukraine. And yes, I'm probably discrediting, but for these meat assaults that have been going on for a year now with the same method, I would have shot the entire command from the army and down it to the regimental level. For this cannot be cured in any other way, and the fact that this disgrace has been going on for more than a year does not even allow to reduce the punishment to penal battalion level. Just in case, the numbers of irretrievable losses for some units with extreme precision up to one individual are known to me, and I do not cite them only for reasons of military secrecy. I sent it to those who should have it, although this, according to experience, is completely useless. So, here we can hear, once again, Bakhmut continues and everyone is just waiting for the counteroffensive. Meanwhile, Ukrainian war reporters report from their side that Ukraine has unilaterally handed over to Russia all seriously wounded prisoners which were captured since the beginning of the full-scale war. Those who could be transported. The Coordination Center notes that this is not an exchange, but a repatriation, the return of the seriously wounded without any conditions as provided by international humanitarian law. They quote, Russia continues to hold captive Ukrainian citizens who should be repatriated too, including seriously ill and wounded, civilians, children, which is a war crime, women, and the elderly. Meanwhile, journalists at the independent news outlet Mediazona have studied data in 35 regions across Russia, and confirmed that the inmate population in these areas fell by 17,000 people in 2022. The findings corroborate reports that thousands of prisoners have left incarceration since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, often to fight alongside Russian troops as mercenaries in exchange for release. The inmate population shifts aren't the same in every Russian region. Many prisons no longer publish inmate data. The numbers barely budged in some places where recruiters were reportedly active, and some facilities were vacated to make room for Ukrainian POWs. But the general trend continues to be the way the Mediazona reports it, and the evidence in Mediazona's sample exceeds anything that pre-invasion trends can explain. Russia's Federal Penitentiary Service temporarily stopped publishing statistics about the nation's inmate population after releasing data in November 2022. That showed the sudden disappearance of 23,000 prisoners in the 2 months prior. The agency started sharing population statistics again in January 2023, this time releasing numbers more easily reconciled with pre-invasion trends. The Wagner Group efforts to recruit inmates to fight in Ukraine started getting broad attention in summer 2022. By February 2023, Russia's own defense ministry had seized control of prisoner recruitment. And, there are human rights organizations, of course, who claim that Wagner recruited as many as 50,000 inmates to fight in Ukraine before the military took over. And this, by the way, is interesting since it, again, ties together with my last episode. This is the focal point of the article that I'm writing for Foreign Policy magazine right now about the prison culture, because I'll be doing this from the aspect of, all these prisoners on the front lines, and especially Wagner Group and Prigozhin, since that's the easiest example that I can use for this very prestigious magazine, and, of course, it's going to have to be very sanitized, but, just saying. At any point, apparently, there have been a lot of visits. One of them is, of course, Putin, who did an Easter visit, sort of, ish. You see, it's been published everywhere at this point when I'm recording this, but apparently, this Easter visit to Russian military headquarters in Ukraine's Luhansk and Kherson regions that Kremlin publicized on Tuesday may have taken place last week, actually, according to the independent news outlet Agentstvo. After studying a video of Putin's trip that was initially distributed by the Kremlin press service, journalists noticed that the president can be heard saying to a military commander, "Easter is coming soon, isn't it?" The version of the video that was uploaded to the Kremlin's official site has been edited to make it sound like Putin is saying it's Easter right now, isn't it? According to Agentstvo, the original and doctored version of the clip was replaced almost immediately, but internet does not forget. You can Google it up anywhere you want. Meanwhile, at the same time, Volodymyr Zelensky visited Ukrainian army positions near Avdiivka in Donetsk direction. Previously, Zelensky had already visited the line of contact several times at Izium, Kherson, Slovyansk, and near Bakhmut twice already. So, he also stated in his visit and afterwards in the speech, "We are finishing this day in Poltava. In the morning I was in Donetsk region in Avdiivka. It's hard to see what Russian terrorists have done to this city. And I honor each of our soldiers, all Ukrainians who have been restraining and gradually destroying this Russian evil for 419 days and 9 years. I had the honor of congratulating Ukrainian soldiers and officers on Easter and presenting awards. I often thank them in my evening addresses for their accuracy and bravery for the destruction of the occupiers." End quote. Now, obviously, this Putin's visit and the comparison to Zelensky and his visit did not go unnoticed. And, Grey Zone, which is a Wagner Group associated Telegram channel, no relation to the American Grey Zone, although by their content one might be clearly forgiven that, you might mistake them for being totally united. See, they stated that, quote, "Earlier today, Russian President Vladimir Putin visited Chaplyanka, according to other sources, Shashlievo in the Kherson region, where he held a meeting with the command staff, including, without sarcasm, the respected Colonel General Michael Teplinsky." And here Grey Zone, a Wagner Group affiliated channel, continues because they had compared this to Zelensky's visit. Quote, "But also, to be fair, the nearest Ukrainian positions are over 60 kilometers away from and from Shashlievko 150 kilometers, while Avdiivka, where Zelensky was, is 3 to 5 kilometers to Russian positions." So, even if it was Putin himself, and even if he went there, he went nowhere near close to front line, even if he was there recently. Meanwhile, Zelensky was up close, and this is admitted by, very pro-Russian people. Meanwhile, the person that I consider one of my journalism mentors, so to speak, from the Russian side, Alexander Nevzorov, I deeply respect this person. He posted on his Telegram about all this mess about Putin's visit and it being fake and everything. Well, he posted the following, to which I kind of have to agree. He's a snarky man. Well, I learned from him a lot too. Quote, "There is no point in discussing another episode of the Putin on the front lines comedy. It does not work at all, not even among the fierce pro-Putin cattle. The dictator's demarches are reduced to sluggish attempts to imitate Zelensky. But pressing Chinese-made icons, grunting over the maps, and exchanging official incantations with generals have zero media effect. No surprise there. Everyone is so accustomed to the 100% Putin lies, the stupid staged antics of the commandos, and the staged nature of these adventures that the desired fire of the holy war is not being stoked in any way. These visits rather have the opposite effect, stirring up the eternal theme of doubles and ridicule." End quote. So, have to agree with this. I mean, like I said, this is why I mentioned the Grey Zone thing. Even if Putin was on the lines, still, that makes him look stupid. Meanwhile, I mentioned that, Girkin and his buddies have created the Club of Angry Patriots, or Disappointed Patriots. The word in Russian is ambiguous, and it's kind of like, not just angry as in raging, it's a different type of angry. And then they posted a manifesto, which is why I just misspoke, because I have my script in front of me, and, misread this part. Sorry. And the thing is that the manifesto is beautiful. It took me a time to kind of, translate this, but it shows what Girkin and these patriots, so-called patriots, think about the war, Russia, everything, and it's just brilliant, and it shows, exactly what they want, because this is their manifesto, and they also, point out how exactly Putin has been failing all this situation. And, if Girkin and his buddies have these complaints and stuff to Putin and everything, then, well, yeah, I still don't know what to say to people who are actually not only pro-war, but even pro-Putin, because that's like being double stupid. But anyway, I'll read you this one. Quote, "We are angry patriots. We love Russia. Our country is waging a serious war, but this war is being waged in a botched way." Here's my being sad, and Girkin being sad too. By the way, we're selling still those. We have two, I think, the spots left for T-shirts of Igor Girkin and him crying and tugging a rocket. So, if you want them, please email us at theeasternborder@gmail.com. Write how much you would be ready to pay for it. And we will send the 15 lucky of you the shirts signed by me with the color and the size of your choice, and the money will go to Ukraine. I haven't really figured out which charity yet, but I think I'll put it on poll. So I'm just gonna mock Girkin and his buddies crying here a bit more. Quote, "The opportunity for a quick and bloodless victory over the Ukrainian side, which has become a tool of NATO, was lost back in 2014 when with the signing of the treacherous Minsk agreements. The military operation that began in 2022 could have followed a very different scenario, but the botched organization at the strategic, operational, and tactical levels led our country to a war of attrition." How sad, once again. Defeat in the war would lead Russia to disastrous consequences. Oh no. The United States and NATO countries make no secret of their intentions to dismember Russia and bringing the Russian people into submission to a new yoke, coming this time from the West. The previous one was Mongol Tatar yoke, by the way. Interestingly enough, well, kind of have to agree that it will bring Russia to disastrous consequences. But I don't really know. I mean, the United States and NATO countries totally openly state that they'd rather not see Russia fall apart. And I personally think Russia will fall apart, but West and NATO are not going to have anything to do with it. But fine, Girkin, your political views are just weird. Carrying on. The country, in its present state, cannot inflict the kind of crushing defeat to the enemy which would force the enemy to accept the terms of peace acceptable to us. However, the military political leadership of Russia is not aware of the seriousness of the situation. Neither military nor industrial mobilization has been carried out on the scale required. Military operations continue to be led by people who, in their abilities, are not even worthy to wear the shoulder straps of sergeants. Everything looks very much like the Russo-Japanese War or World War I. What's next? Well, Mr. Girkin, I agree with you that everything looks just like Russo-Japanese War or World War I. And I can tell you what's next. Exactly what you think is going to happen, except you search for the blame in wrong directions. So, it is what it is. Carrying on. Civil society and the angry patriots, as part of it, have taken over many of the functions of the Russian state. First of all, we are talking about direct supply and re-equipment of the fighting units of the Russian army. We will continue to do this in any situation. We have experience of other tasks as well. We understand that this is not the time to continue the confrontation between the Reds and Whites of a century ago. It is either fools or agents of the enemy who can argue seriously during the most dangerous war. The power and big business there remain those who have shifted their capital and their loyalties to the West. They are ready for sabotage as well as for direct collusion with the enemy and consequently betrayal. We do not exclude this preparation by them of a pro-Western coup, capitulation, and consequently the dismemberment of Russia. This scenario we will resist by all available means. We are ready to cooperate with all the healthy forces in society, with all those who don't want Russia to lose. All for the front, all for the victory. Glory to Russia. I'm sorry for that being a bit loud, but it's just so silly. Oh, they signed Club of Angry Patriots too. Whatever. Now, what a fun guy. I mean, great club. Awesome things he's trying to do, right? We will, of course, be following his efforts of trying to somehow defeat, as he says, big business and people in power of the Russian Federation, while his club numbers about 9 to 10 people, of whom even Girkin himself and his buddies are being arrested and can't even afford cars for the most part. Yeah, that's gonna go well. I don't know, maybe they can rile up big masses of people, but that will lead to the splintering of Russia itself. Not the western part, but it's just me. The fun part is that, again, this Club of Angry Patriots, might seem silly, because, sounds like ultra-nationalists, some sort of thing like what Hitler would do, but there is still Vladimir Kachkov. This is another Girkin's buddy, but he has his own club. And yeah, because Girkin's club, it isn't even the most insane pro-whatever, I don't even know what club, in Russia. There's another club which is a bit too insane that, when this guy gets invited on to various pro-Russian YouTube channels, which he does get often, see, you can visibly see the cringe and the awkwardness of other people who have invited him in. It's just beyond stupid, to be honest. And the thing is, Klitschko is the guy who was the ultra-patriotic Orthodox dude who's gone completely insane. Like, he's an ex-Soviet colonel, but his messages are just bizarre. And, he had made this one video on Stalingrad TV, and this is the part where I used ChatGPT, because he made a statement against Putin himself. But, if Girkin's statement looks at least somewhat sane, then what Klitschko stated, and he has another of his own club, right? Then Klitschko's statement is just bizarre. Just bizarre. I won't read you all of the stuff that they made in his statement, because a lot of it contains specific data and everything, and the video was 40 minutes long, and, rereading it and commenting on it would take me even more. I'm just going to read you the beginning parts of it, which already by themselves show the weird part of this. And again, like I said, I want to be honest with you, I used ChatGPT for this, because everything else I translated myself. Hard to find people who would help me out. This is where I just took the transcript, which was auto-generated by YouTube, and dragged it through ChatGPT to give it translation and make it sound reasonable. Then I reread it, and it looks more or less sane, but I don't know. If this works and isn't too bad, then I will experiment with this and probably use it in some other episodes. I might get more sleep that way. But anyways, here we go, because this is the statement of the All-Russian Assembly of the situation in the country and the armed forces. And yeah, again, I'm reading you these statements just so you understand that, see, the people who try to portray, Americans especially, who try to portray on internet the Russia as the reasonable side who's doing everything of rational choices because, they were afraid of everything and this is all planned out and they know what they're doing. Yeah, the war is actually actively supported only by people like Girkin and this guy. Just so you knew, this is to counteract the whole Russia is a rational agent propaganda machine, and I just want to show what kind of people these guys like and apparently agree with. And hey, I'm not judging. It's just that, if you're pro-war in America, then, you should probably, take responsibility for your pro-war buddies inside Russia. So here we go. Quote, "We, veterans of the armed forces and special services of Russia, united in All-Russian Officer Assembly, have carefully analyzed the current military, political, and strategic situation after a year of the so-called special military operation. We have discussed the address of the President of the Russian Federation, Citizen Putin," which is interesting because this is the first time someone calls him a citizen, but that's a foreshadowing of what's to come, "to the Federal Assembly and studied attentively by the assessments of recent events by various political forces and public organizations. Based on this, we have reached the following conclusions." And now we get to the good part. Worth the wait, trust me, guys. "Putin, as the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, hypocritically evaded making morally political and military strategic decisions to protect the integrity of Russia and the way of life of the Russian and other indigenous peoples of Russia. He cowardly lowered the level of our global confrontation with the satanic forces to the level of trade and economic interests of his clan. Thus, he has revealed himself as an opponent of the struggle for a united Russian world. It has become clear that Putin and Zelensky, being of non-Russian blood, equally reject the restoration of the Russian world of Great and Little Russia. Zelensky will fight to the last Ukrainian, and Putin, in quotation marks, will systematically and carefully replace the Russian and other indigenous populations of Russia with millions of immigrants at the rate of 1 million per month on the front lines." Now, here's a question that I have for them. Who wants to immigrate to Russia? I mean, Central Asian people do, but they're not that many. It's quite hard to get to there. And what? 1 million per month? I mean, I don't... North Koreans don't run away that fast. I mean... Okay, I don't know. Imaginary immigrants are fine. Carrying on, because this is just so silly. "The war has shown that Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, is the hidden but true leader of Russophobia in Russia, and nothing that is associated with Putin or his policies can be considered truly Russian. Putin's refusal to appeal to the people and the army with a call for patriotic war in the face of mortal danger has drawn a moral and political line under his state activities. There is nothing more to expect from him." And well, yeah, I can agree with Kvachkov and his totally insane buddies here. Putin does not represent Russia. He's holding Russia hostage, but probably not because of the reasons why Kvachkov is doing this situation. Be more careful about this. Suddenly don't want to start agreeing with Kvachkov too much, you know. Quote, and this is the final part of this situation, because I'm not going to go in much deeper. Again, this was a 40 minutes video. He himself will not stand up to defend the homeland or the vast country, nor will he rise to mortal combat. The continuation of Putin's political life means the physical death of the Russian world from national asphyxiation. However, not a single political party represented in the State Duma or any other party, nor any of the many public organizations, has dared to openly give a harsh but objective assessment of the actions of the political and military leadership of the country during the war, and declared their ability to achieve victory, our Russian victory. At the same time, the past year has shown the accuracy of the assessment of the military, political, and military strategic situation in the statement of the All Russians Federal Assembly of May 19, 2022, which I quote, and this is a quote within a quote. So yeah, quote, the special operation ended and a full-scale war began in its spiritual, moral, national, political, and socio-economic essence. This is a new patriotic war of historical Russia against the global international forces of the so-called New World Order. The statement also included specific proposals by these guys. He's now quoting what his crazy buddies said. Specific proposals to the top officials of the state and the church for a radical correction of the situation on the front lines of the struggle against Bandera-style Nazis. However, neither the political nor the military leadership of the Russian Federation nor the church, I don't know why he bothered Gundyayev. Patriarch Kirill. He's totally Gundyayev, the KGB colonel, but still, I don't know why they bother him. He's just, busy doing vile things and getting more luxury watches and buying new super yachts. But hey, this guy believes him, so what can you do? It's just weird. No one, apparently, according to them, has accepted the military defensive measures proposed by us. Now we responsibly state that the military actions of strategic scale carried out on February 24, 2022 by the armed forces and other troops of the Russian Federation, as well as the Corps of People's Militia of Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, private military companies and various volunteer formations, clearly demonstrated the inability of the highest political and military leadership. And then he includes a bunch of people, Gerasimov, Shoigu, Nabiulin, everyone basically, blah, 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 blah. And then he carries on with... This has turned into a deadly threat to the existence of Russia as a system that forms the basis of the entire Russian world. And then he starts to just explain everything that, how Putin exactly has failed, and everything is just crazy. And I want to finish this because, he finishes the paragraph of stating why, by Soviet law, no less, he sees Putin as a terrible war criminal. Not because he's inhumane, just because he's not killing enough Russians and Ukrainians and stuff like that. But as a result of all of the bad stuff that Putin has done, quote, as a result, foul language and profanity has wildly replaced strictly defined regulations and guidelines, as well as the order of preparing for and conducting operations and combat and military practice. The introduction of unwritten orders has been monstrously immoral in assessing the losses incurred, where the more losses, the more rewards and higher evaluations for commanders and chiefs. And yeah, this is exactly what Girkin has been saying. This is what everyone has been saying. I mean, these are the guys who support the war, who want Russia to win. And these guys, unlike Solovyov, who just states everything that, that he's paid for, these guys believe this idea. They genuinely believe that they're doing what's best for Russia, and openly state that they want, conquer the Baltics afterwards and the Poland and all this stuff. It's just, for them, that's an objective good. These guys, unlike anyone else, have never really changed their opinions or shifted away from being pure fascists. They've always been saying that they are fascists. That is who they are. This is great for them. And I don't know, I'd rather believe these guys who are true believers of this whole situation, who, actually want Russia to win with all hearts and minds, instead of, Solovyov, who just sells out. I don't know what he believes in. And if you, look at this from this perspective, these guys are the only ones who truly believe that Russia should win and that this is a moral good inside of Russia. And if you do this outside of Russia, maybe you should, think a bit about what kind of people do you follow. And secondly, if these guys are the only ones making the most competent decisions on the military front,